Hey Matt, going over some of the points that we played the other day to enhance your consistency and overall effectiveness. Opening up with a nice serve to start the points. We've talked about enhancing your consistency by sticking to the situation rather than going for things that are trying to make things happen that are not there. And this next point is an example of that, where right here on this slice forehand, I'm not really sure why you're slicing it, and you're too far back to hit an approach shot. And that's, I think, what I told you in the moment on this day. But because you're like 1 foot way behind the baseline, 1 foot on, that's too far away from the net to approach. You should just hit another forehand like you did the previous one. Here, the movement after this backhand volley takes you a little off the court, and then you overclose. But I think this last shot is worth a tribute.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows? Only time. And who can say if your love grows as your heart shows? Only time. We gotta.
Anyway, here we got a couple of unnecessary slice forehands. You got to use your topspin and use that neutral 3/4 pace that we talked about. And since we got this video, let's take a moment and check in on your serve mechanics. The loading is looking good there. Turned and tilted, the shoulder positions, legs loaded and ready to drive up. I'll keep an eye on that stuff. Your main job on the serve is to just mix up your targets based on who you're playing and manage your toss as needed and your contact point. This next point, this is how you should be playing every point. Nice high percentage return. You got a couple of 3/4 pace shots pushing me back. You create the short ball, and you choose to approach on one you can get way inside the baseline on. The only thing I would, consider is that when you get to this backhand on the approach shot right here, you're finishing inside a singles alley, so I would approach that down the line so it's easier to cover the court. Fortunately for you, this time it didn't matter because you hit such a good approach. And this is another point that, again, this is how you should be playing every point. Using the pace on the return to get it back deep, and follow it up with a couple of 3/4 pace forehands to move me around, and then it pays off. Here you can't approach on this return, only because you're near the baseline and in the doubles alley. So you'd have to take this serve a lot more on the rise, much further in if you wanted to come in behind it. It's not a bad idea. You just got to be aware of where you're approaching from. This is another really good point that you play coming up right here. Nice return, using my pace, and you get on defense a couple of shots. On these first two afterwards, you go a little higher. Use my pace to stay in the point. But when you get pushed back, you got to recover back up because, here you get pushed back and now you're pretty far back behind the baseline the rest of the point. You don't have to do that. Just recover back up to neutral, and then you'll have a better chance of moving me around. This next point is another good point that you're playing. Nice return, deep, another nice 3/4 pace forehand. But this approach shot, this is something that is an optional time to come in if you can get in position and hurt me. I don't know that that's necessarily the way I would describe how you got to that slice backhand. So when you're right on top of the baseline or just barely inside it, you can come in, but you certainly don't have to. You only want to pick those times to come in when you can set up well and hurt your opponent. So instead, on this one, rather than slice backhand approaching, I would just stay back and hit an inside-out forehand where you control the point, and then hopefully you can create a shorter ball, an easier ball where you got more time on to hit the approach. Here you hit a nice second serve, and then you're in this situation where now it's a neutral forehand, and you're trying to approach from 3 feet behind the baseline, and you can't do that. It's too far away, you see where I'm at. I'm not on defense there, so that's not a time to sneak attack either. So this is basically an approach shot from 3 feet behind the baseline, and you hit a good shot, but I'm making a silly unforced there that I'm basically giving it away. So you got to wait to approach until you can load up at least a foot or so, probably more like 3 or 4 feet inside the baseline. And this next point is, more of the same. This is the neutral forehand we've been working on that's really going to help win you matches, but this is also you approaching from way too far back that makes your life 10 times harder. You almost pulled it off with a great little pickup that you almost made, but it's too far away to get to the net from where you're hitting from right there. So, you've got to be a lot more aware of where you're approaching from. Here both your shots are really good. The serve is nice, first volley's pretty good, but you're over closing. You're getting way too close to the net, so the lob is wide open. Here we see the incredibly handsome fat guy on the far end hit a good serve and a backhand to the open court, and that's when you should have told the fat guy, "Nice shot, fatso." Mainly because fat people appreciate when their opponents are polite. And look, these next couple of points are not so bad. I know how it feels when you make a couple errors, but, anytime you miss a couple of forehands like these that are neutral and slightly defensive, you got to talk to yourself in between points and think, well, okay, get that 3/4 pace back going before you get into the next point, walk up to the line and, keep your targets in mind and just make a tiny little adjustment and decide how you're going to keep playing these points the same way. And watching this next point, that looks like that's exactly what you just did, except then you try to hit an approach shot from too far back again, and that's the error. You got both feet behind the baseline when you're loading right there, and then you're trying to make that into an approach shot. It's just too far away from the net to be able to close in properly, and it's just too hard of a shot, too difficult of a situation to try to force yourself into. And there you go again with that forehand trying to do the same thing. So this is just a winning play, but on the volley we got to clean up the footwork. You got to lead with that left foot as you're going forward through the shot. And that's something you've been good at for a long time, so it's surprising to see you miss it here. Okay, so here we got a nice serve, and we're going to take a look at this forehand that you missed. So to be clear, I'm totally on board with your shot selection choice here, but just not the way that you did it. So after a good serve and a short, high-bouncing return, you definitely want to be looking to control the point on the shot. But to do that, you'd have to make contact chest level, and you'd have to be back by the orange lines in order to do that. Instead, you let the ball get up on you where you got to make contact eye level or higher, and anytime the ball gets up on you, you need to hit up through it and shape it like you see in this graphic. Now, the technique suffers as a result of making the wrong choice, but there's a couple of things here technically that I want you to take a look at and work on. The loading looks good here with the shoulders and the stance, but I don't understand why your racket's so low if you want to drive this relatively straight and flatter. So to drive this ball a couple of feet over the net with pace, you need your right hand up by your right shoulder. Now with the ball up out of your strike zone for contact, that causes you to break your wrist, and that throws off the racket face. This is what causes the ball to go into the net, but I want you to look at what's going on with your left hand kind of stopping your right forearm. So we've been down this road before with the left arm on your forehand, and I think you know what to do about it, but make it priority over the next couple of weeks, where you pay attention, especially when you start the day warming up. The other main thing you take away from analyzing this stroke, this particular forehand, is that it's a lot easier to have good mechanics when you can get in good position and make contact in your strike zone by your chest or waist level. Here you got a really nice looking second serve, an excellent neutral forehand, and then you get on defense. You got to throw that up high and cross court so you have time to recover. Here you start with a really nice serve and a good forehand to start the point, but you're kind of jumping the gun a little bit here with this sneak attack, assuming it's going to be working and putting me on defense and just kind of charging in, when you got to wait and see what happens if you're going to sneak attack, because it kind of looks like you're just hitting an approach shot from way behind the baseline. So summarizing this stuff, we can set some performance goals for the next couple months and certainly keep managing your serve, especially in the wind. With your toss, you don't have to lose your slice forehand, but you want to use that 75% three-quarter pace topspin forehand as much as possible. You got to be a lot more aware of where you're hitting approach shots from, and when you're coming to the net and where you're coming to the net from. And certainly pay attention to how much you're closing off the net and how you're stepping into your volleys.